Hi friends, today in our current affairs class we will discuss an important issue. This issue is in news because of Russia-Ukraine war. Russia has attacked Ukraine, and in retaliation to that the Western countries impose some sanctions on Russia, and this is one among them, that is the SWIFT sanctions. SWIFT. So SWIFT is one of the operations of the SWIFT. The Western countries impose the sanctions. So what is this SWIFT? What is the purpose of this SWIFT? And what are the sanctions that they imposed it on this operation of the SWIFT as far as Russia is concerned, and when it was started, and how it is going to impact the Russian economy and as well as the total world. So this we will see. Mostly this SWIFT question you may get it as prelims rather than it as a mains. Mostly it is preliminary point of view, very important. The SWIFT abbreviation is Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. If at all I want to explain this, this is a financial telecommunication. This is a financial telecommunication. An interbank financial telecommunication. An interbank financial telecommunication. A society of interbank financial telecommunication. A society of interbank financial telecommunication worldwide. Worldwide. That means this is a mechanism through which the interbank financial telecommunication happened through the worldwide. So it's a society, it's not a company. It's a society, it's not a company. It is there in Belgium. It is there in Belgium. So it's not a company, but it is a society that was there in the Belgium, and this is a Belgian cooperative society, and this was actually started in the year 1973. This was started in the year 1973. So what is the purpose behind this SWIFT, and what is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication? See, before I come to SWIFT, just I will give a small example in India so that we can understand the SWIFT a little bit later. Normally when we take the banking system, suppose if you want to transfer money or if you want to send money from one branch of a particular bank to another branch of the same bank, that means this is a bank A and it is having a branch 1 and branch 2, and you are having an account in branch 1 and you want to send some money to a person who is in bank 2, whose account is in branch 2 of the same bank. Then if you give the check, it will be dealt at the bank level. That means the bank will see like whether whatever the check that you have issued and whether this person is having that account or not, and whether this person is having that balance or not, and the bank will decide. But suppose if the transaction is happening between two banks, A and B, and in this a person is holding an account and he has issued a check to on the name of a person who is holding the account in bank B. Now the same bank cannot verify it because the details are not with this bank, because the details whether this person is owning the account in bank B or not, this bank don't know, and this bank only knows that this person is having an account and this person is having money. Now this will be done by whom? This will not be done by like a single bank here, but this will be done by a specialized banks, or normally a bank can do that, but that particular function we will call it as clearing. Clearing function we will call it as clearing. Normally we will call it as clearing houses. Normally we will call it as clearing houses, and in most of the cases Reserve Bank of India will do that clearing function. Even State Bank of India is doing clearing function. Some other banks are also doing this clearing function. So clearing function means if at all I want to transfer money from one account of one particular bank to the another account of another bank, then you need this clearing functions, and if it is in a same bank, it will be done at the bank level itself. So this is what a clearing function. Why this clearing function? In order to make the transaction fast, in order to make the transaction fast, in order to make the transaction secure. So you need this mechanism, a different mechanism which can coordinate this A and B, coordinate this A and B. And now the checks, now we are using checks to some extent, but apart from that, now entire online transactions that we are doing, and in the online transaction everything is connected to a particular server, and that server will check the balances and account, and finally after the validation it will send that money. But don't think like it done automatically. There is someone behind that entire transaction and they do that clearing function. Otherwise you can't transfer simply. Otherwise you can't transfer simply because the details has to be verified. Now this is in case of India. This is in case of India. Just assume you are in a foreign country. You are in a foreign country. That means you are not in an India. Just assume you are in United States of America. And I am in India. I am in India. So I have an account in SBI Bank. SBI Bank in India. And I have some maybe Citibank or some X bank in someone is having their account in USA. Now I want to send money from SBI to the account in United States of America, which is of not same bank and which is not of same country. So your Reserve Bank of India can't do, because your Reserve Bank of India don't have anything on this. But anyhow here what will happen is there is an agreement between the countries. There is an agreement between the countries like, okay, your persons can send money to my bank and my banks can send money to your bank. There are some agreements and according to that international norms they will send. But if a representative from SBI calls to Citibank, or if a representative physically meets Citibank, like I am sending so and so money from so and so account and it must be deposited to so and so account, that will take time, that leads to delay, that leads to delay. So physically you can't go and inform them that, and you can use normal telephone or you can write a letter and you can do anything to inform that, okay, I am SBI manager and I am a head of the SBI bank, we are sending this much amount of money. That information will itself take lot of time to reach these people. And moreover there is a problem of security, and tomorrow I can say like anyone can tamper with that information and they may threaten the entire integrity of the safe banking system. That's the reason why what we have done is we have created a safe telecommunication system. Safe telecommunication system. So what is this safe telecommunication system? Initially we have a telecommunication system called TELEX, TELEX. So what is this purpose of TELEX? This TELEX will send the information, Suppose I am sending the money from SBI to USA, it will send some information like, okay, I am from SBI and I am sending some amount of money to a particular account. This is the information. Once this information is reached to the United States of America, then immediately this person's account, in this person's account money, they will credit, in this person's account, they will credit some money, now he can draw that money. And if you send the just information, then how come that money has came from India to United States of America? It will take some time. Physical transaction, for the physical transaction it will take some time, but these people cannot wait till that point of time. Anyhow the safe communication came from India that they have already received or they have already deducted some money, and now you can give that money and we will do the transaction later in the sense with some sort of delay, because it's a physical process. So that is how the transactions are happening. That means you need a telecommunication system which sends the information. That is what telex. That is what telex. But when it comes to this telex, the speed of the telex was low, and even the security concerns are there with this telex. That is the reason why in the year 1973, we have started a society called the SWIFT. We have started a cooperative society called SWIFT, Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. The SWIFT is an upgraded version of telex. Now what this SWIFT will do? SWIFT will give the SWIFT will provide a safest communication for interbank financial transactions. And it is across the world. That means if any financial transaction has to taken place between one country to another country, then immediately this SWIFT will send the message. I will come to that how SWIFT will work. This SWIFT will send a message, and with that message now they can disburse the transaction, and the transaction between the actual players or the financial institutions, that will take with little delay. But here the operations are happening seamlessly or continuously. So that is very, very important. We can't wait till the physically that particular money or that particular transaction taken place. So this is what SWIFT. Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. But you need to understand one thing in this SWIFT is it is just sending a message. SWIFT is not owning anyone's account. SWIFT is not dealing with anyone's money. SWIFT is not doing any clearinghouse function here. It is just giving the message. It's not physically taking money from someone and giving to someone. SWIFT is not doing that. SWIFT only giving the information. And why we need such a safest communication? Because if you send the communication in any other way, it might pose some sort of security challenges. That means someone can tamper with that medium and he can misquote that information, or he himself can quote a different information. That is the reason why in a globalized society where the international transactions has become imminent and now they are at a higher scale, definitely you need to have a safest communication. Simply you can call to the bank in United States of America and you can say that, okay, I am deducted from this and you please add some amount of money to that. It will happen to you immediately next day or tomorrow. But how come an officer sitting in a bank believes your word? How can he knows that you are from so and so bank? So is there any authentication? Just by in a call, can he really able to imagine that whether you are a banker or someone fraud person? So that is the reason why you need the safest telecommunication system. That is what the SWIFT will do. So SWIFT is not dealing with any financial transaction here. It is only sending the telecommunication. And it's no way responsible, like suppose if this bank unable to transfer the money physically to the bank in United States of America, SWIFT is not liable to that, because SWIFT is just sending a message, and ultimately these banks will lose confidence on this bank and they don't take any transaction from next time. So this is what SWIFT. Now I will give some factual informations with respect to SWIFT. When this SWIFT was started, it was in the year 1973 with 239 banks in 15 countries. Because this purpose is to connect the international banking transactions or financial transaction, because I will come to that. Apart from banking transactions, you can do other transactions also. I'll come to that. So initially with 15 countries with 239 banks, it was started in the year 1973. Later, by the time of 1977, 518 banks, 518 banks, 518 banks across 22 countries, across 22 countries. But if you see today, 11,000 banks, 11,000 banks, bank, not every branch is a different bank, no. So 11,000 banks across 200 countries, across 200 countries, you can imagine. So now almost the entire world is connected with this SWIFT network. That means across 200 countries through 11,000 banks you can do the transaction to any country of this 200, to any bank of this 11,000. That means now the transaction has become very simple with this SWIFT. With this SWIFT, because you are simply sending the message, and by looking into that message they are they are clearing that transaction, and later in the back end this physical transaction will happen. So these are the important numbers. So 11,000 banks across 200 countries. Now apart from these banks, does any other transactions, apart from these banks, does any other transaction happened over this SWIFT network? That I will explain now. Apart from these banks, first banks, next clearing houses. Clearing house means it is a house, it is a place which will settle the transactions between two, which will settle the transaction between two. You are from somewhere and he is from somewhere. Now he is an entity, he will try to take that money from him and he will give that money to him, and for him it is very, very important, because he must know the information must flow through him. So clearing houses. Next, this forex and money brokers, foreign exchange, and as well as this money brokers, that means who will deal about this forex reserves and the exchange of money. Next, asset management companies, asset management companies, asset management companies. So because they also deal, because their transactions deals across the world, they are not only confined to a particular country. Next, corporate business houses, corporate business houses, because corporate businesses also use this information. If they supplied something to the foreign country and they need to get some money from them, or if they are importing something, they need to pay something for the other country. So that is the reason why this information is very, very important, very, very important. Next, security dealers. So dealers that are deals with the securities. So that means whenever there is a cross border transaction, the physical transaction takes some time, but these all people involved in these international transactions, and they can use this SWIFT network. They can use this SWIFT network, and in this SWIFT network what they will do is, whatever the message that they want to send, they will type that message, and along with that message in a secure transaction they will send their SWIFT code. There is a SWIFT code is there. SWIFT code is 8 letter or sometimes it is an 11 letter. That means it's, suppose just I am giving an example like ANDB0712. This shows like, this shows a bank, this shows a bank, and this shows country, this shows the city in that particular country. And if you have any different branches, if you want to deal, you can use it remaining 3 letters. This is how normally a SWIFT code. That means an information associated with a SWIFT code we will send, and the recipient, because this is only travels through a proper channel, and it will only communicated through a proper channel, because all the banks and whatever the other institutes just now I have mentioned, they are interconnected to this SWIFT. It is the safest communication. By looking into this and by reading this information, they will settle the transaction. They will settle the transaction. Now once you understand this importance of SWIFT, now the SWIFT has become inevitable in order to settle our different financial transaction. Either it can be a transaction of simple a bank transfer, or it can be related to any corporate business, or it can be related to any of the forex, or it can be related to any of the asset management company, or it can be related to any security aspect. That means now you can do the securities transaction, you can do trades transaction, you can do some system transaction, you can do some treasury transaction. So you can do all this type of transaction by using this SWIFT. Now actually why this SWIFT has in news? Because this SWIFT now it is having 11,000 banks across the 200 countries. Now it is having its own governing board. It has its own governing board. Around 25-member governing board is there, and the 25-member governing board will take proper decisions on how to what are the changes that we need to bring, and what are the things we are supposed to do and we are not supposed to do. Now what happened is United States of America, Canada and European Union decided that they don't want to take any message through SWIFT platform from Russia. They don't want to use any SWIFT platform from Russia. That means now the Russian usage of SWIFT will become irrelevant. That means now if you are sending any information through the SWIFT, they are not ready to accept, they don't consider it as, they don't allow Russian to connect USA, Canada, EU with that SWIFT platform. This is what the sanction exactly they have imposed. So that means the SWIFT sanctions on Russia has disabled the Russia for the usage of SWIFT network for its transactions. Because Russia is having lot of transactions with the Western countries. The citizens may have bank-to-bank transaction, the traders may have a transaction with respect to exports and imports, there might be some forex transaction, there might be a transactions of some asset related thing, there might be a transactions related to the securities. The transactions can be anything, but Russia is definitely having some transactions. Even Russia invested a lot of money in United States of America's dollars. So these all transactions that will be done only through the SWIFT. Now the point is, this communication network has closed. Then immediately you may ask a question, sir, it is just only about the text, or this is only about a telecommunication network. That doesn't mean that the liabilities of Russia and the liabilities of USA, Canada, EU will not be vanish away, no? Suppose just assume that Russia has imported something, now Russia has to pay that money. Because of this cancellation of SWIFT, does really the Russians liability will go? No, Russia has to pay, but the point is they can't settle the transaction immediately. Just assume Russia is exported something to European Union, just assume to the Germany. Now Germany has to pay that money. Just because I cancel this SWIFT, does really the liability on Germany will go away? No, they have to pay, but that will take some time. It may not happen immediately, but in a globalized world, in the 21st century, just a payment take lot of delay, then it is not at all good. That will have its own impact on the economy of that Russia and economy of that whatever the other country on the other side, and also on the overall world economy. I will come to that little bit late. So this is what exactly the sanctions imposed on the Russia. Now if Russia has imposed with that sanctions, then how Russia can deal with the other countries? Perhaps it will be very difficult. It is something like, they are disabling Russia from the entire Western financial transaction system. And according to the United States of America, in the words of United States of America, it will make the Russia to rely on telephone or fax machine to make the payments. Literally, it makes Russia to depend on telephones and as well as the fax machines to settle their payments. And you know how difficult it is, you know how safe the telephone and as well as the fax system is all about. Do you think that if someone sent from Russia that, okay, I am importing something, you pay that money to me, do you think that the people will pay automatically without confirming whether it is from the Russia or whether it is from the concerned person or not? So it completely take away the confidence on the entire financial transaction itself. We don't know who is settling, and there are so many chances that someone can tamper with this, and it automatically removes the entire confidence on the system, and it questions the integrity of the total financial system. That's the reason why United States of America, Canada and European Union has decided to impose the sanctions, swift sanctions on Russia. Now what happened is actually Russia knows this. Russia might have aware about these type of things, because in the Russian-Ukrainian crisis I have already explained, in the year 2014 itself, when Russia annexed this Crimea, there were some sanctions by United States of America. At that point of time, they tried to impose the swift sanctions on Russia in the year 2014 itself. By keeping that point in mind, Russia has developed its own financial this financial telecommunication system. That system we will call it as system for transfer of financial message, SPFS we call it as system for transfer of financial message, system for transfer of financial message, system for transfer of financial message, like a SWIFT, but they are using only for the domestic transaction. They are only using it for the domestic transaction. If it is using for the domestic transaction, then there is no use. It must be accepted by the other countries. The recipient country should also accept this platform, otherwise they don't have a confidence on you. So, but Russia is trying that. Even China is also trying with its own system, because they think like this entire SWIFT transaction is something completely West dominated, and whenever an opportunity comes to the West, they will simply impose the sanctions on that. Then it will be very difficult for the eastern countries, especially like China and Russia, to have a negotiation or to have some sort of relations with the other countries. So that's the reason why China has also started its own system, that we will call it as cross-border interbank payment system. Cross-border interbank payment system. Interbank payment system. We can call it as SIPS. So this SIPS is of China's, and this system for transfer of financial message is of Russia. They have already started. They have their own thing, but just have an idea that it is a means of telecommunication. The organization, whatever we are talking about SWIFT, it does not manage the accounts on behalf of individuals or financial institutions, and it does not hold funds from the third party, and it's not perform any clearing or settlement function. Here it is not do any sort of settlement functions. It is just a telecommunication network. Now you may ask a question, sir, does this only one SWIFT is available across the world? Don't we have any other system? We have some other systems, but when it comes to the reliability or confidence on SWIFT, it is very high. I'll give like Fedwire, CHIPS, Ripple, like these are some of the systems but when it comes to the reliability and confidence, the SWIFT is having very high confidence. The SWIFT is having very high confidence, and the SWIFT will send that message quickly, and it will be so accurate, and it is so secure, so secure. So this is about SWIFT, because SWIFT is in news and some people having lot of confusion about what is this SWIFT, and if this SWIFT sanctions come, then how it affects. Now I will explain how exactly it is going to affect the Russian economy and Indian economy, so that you can understand the importance of the SWIFT. And does really it is the only country that is under sanction? No, in the year 2018 the Iran was also put under the SWIFT sanction, because at that point of time the conflict between Russia and Iran, the conflict between United States of America and Iran was high when Donald Trump was the president, and after that it is escalated. So now Russia was placed under this. Now what will happen is, if the SWIFT transactions came into, SWIFT sanctions came into effect, first one, the financial transactions will stop. First one is financial transactions with foreigners. Domestically it will okay. Financial transactions with foreigners. Financial transactions with foreigners. With foreigners it will get stopped. That means if I want to, suppose if my relatives are in Ukraine, if my relatives are in Russia and they are in distress, I want to send money. No, I can't send it now. I may send it at a later date. I may send it with some delay, but I can't send like how I used to send regularly, because this transaction has completely closed. Now it will take a lot of time. So financial transactions with foreigners, that will be stopped, and it will have its own effect on the remittances. It will have its own effect on the foreigners who are staying in the state of Russia, because now they can't get the money from outside easily. Second one, meeting obligations. Meeting obligations means either Russia is having some obligations to the other countries, or other countries have some sort of obligations to the Russia to pay some amount of money for any purposes, either it is of humanitarian, or to invest something, or to settle some dispute, or to purchase something, anything. Those obligations now will have its own effect. Now you can't meet your obligations, and whatever the things that you have signed earlier, then it will become infructuous. That means there is no validity, because the system is not allowing to go for the transaction. Next, receiving payments for export. Receiving payments for export. Receiving payments for exports. That means Russia has already exported, but now they can't get that money. They can't get that money because the system is not allowing to do. The system is not allowing to do. At the same time, imports, and whatever the imports they have made, now they can't pay the money. They can't pay the money because it takes a traditional way. And providing short term credit, suppose if any credit that Russia want to provide, that credit they can't do, they can't provide now. And international trade and finance, they can't access their dollar assets. So even Russia is having lot of dollar assets in America, in United States of America. Now they can't get an access to that. Immediately they can't get an access to that. So this is going to have a lot of impact. That means when they think like even their export, they don't receive any amount of money, they don't export. An exporter feel like I am doing export but I am not getting money. He don't do export. When he don't do export, it creates a shortage. And if it creates the shortage in the world market, then it creates the inflation in the world market. Suppose take the case of crude oil. Now the crude oil export, they are doing lot of exports, and when they are doing lot of exports, they'll get money immediately. But the point here is, because of this SWIFT, now they are not getting the money. When they don't get the money, why they will do the export? They don't export. And when they don't export this crude oil and natural gas, it automatically creates the shortage in the receiving countries like the European Union countries. Then it hikes the oil prices in the world market. And suppose just Russia is importing something, and now the Russia is unable to pay that money, so they don't export to the Russia. Now there is a surplus, that values come down. So that means, because this is one of the major economy which is having its own reserves of oil and natural gas and even wheat and some of the important defense equipment. So definitely the SWIFT sanctions on Russia will affect the world market, and it brings some sort of imbalances in the demand and supply of the other commodities. So this is going to affect the world market. Now, suppose even if they want to borrow some money, can they borrow from the foreign countries? If they want to borrow some money, can they borrow? They can't borrow, because the transactions are not that easy, and that is why even if someone is trying to give some money to you, the borrowing cost increases. And if someone don't supply anything, suppose if you are unable to import the things to you, then there will be a shortage of things and there will be an inflation in your economy, because the goods and services availability will be less because you are not importing. And when your borrowing cost increasing, when your inflation itself is increasing, it has its own value on their currency. The currency value again comes down. And when the currency value comes down, their external debt goes up, because your borrowing is increasing. Moreover, when your currency value decreases, it automatically enhances your debt problem. Your debt to GDP increases, and your interest, in order to regulate the inflation, your interest rate increases. So that's how this is going to have its own effect. And moreover, when government is taking more amount of money from the money, and it has become very difficult to get the borrowing and all, the private investments will reduce, inflation increases, currency depreciates, borrowing cost increases, debt to GDP ratio increases. So this is how it is going to affect an economy, because this is an interconnected global economy. And in this interconnected global economy, suddenly the financial transaction has cut between you and the other important countries, then it will be very difficult for us. So that is the reason why this SWIFT transaction is very, very important. And now the Western countries, they don't want to physically involve in this Ukraine, because Ukraine is not a NATO member, but they want to put a sanction in a different way, like that will really make Russia so difficult to survive. And whether to these transactions Russia will really succumb, or Russia will go with its own plans, because as on today the Russia is going on with its own plans. But just have an idea about the SWIFT network. But when it comes to the domestic thing, this is not at all helpful, because in the domestic system we have our own system. And under the Reserve Bank of India, whether it is National Payment Corporation of India or whether it is the other clearing houses, they will performing their own function. But when it comes to the internal transaction, this problem comes, and this is going to have such an impact. And do you think that these impacts in Russia will only confine to the Russia? No, it will have its own effect. It has its own ripple effect in the other countries also. And the investments, everything come down. And what was Russia has already committed to the other countries has also come down, because Russia need to import some of the raw materials or some of the things, anything. So this is what about a Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. A 25-member board is there, and mainly the 10 countries used to regulate these functions of this entire SWIFT performance. So here it is regulated by central banks of 10 different countries. Just you can get that. Here the countries are like Belgium, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Netherlands, UK, USA, Switzerland and Sweden. So these countries central banks normally regulate the functions of this SWIFT. Apart from that, the Indian central bank, the other countries central banks are also involved in this. But this is the total network, and it is doing some billions and billions of transactions that they are doing. Okay, it's not simple. Today, if you are looking into the SWIFT, the billions of transactions are happening to the SWIFT, and SWIFT has become very safest platform. Even if you see in case of this Nirav Modi case also, whenever this Nirav Modi tried to purchase the diamonds in other countries, the Punjab National Bank has sent messages through the SWIFT, and the moment when they send the message to the SWIFT and he received money there and he purchased it, but he hasn't paid it here to the Punjab National Bank. That's the case. So SWIFT is helpful everywhere for both traders, exporters, investors, the security dealers and the forex and money dealers, and as well as the banking system. So that is why it is a vast messaging network which includes banks and other financial institutions. Use it for quickly, accurate and secure telecommunication transaction system. Okay, so this is something about SWIFT platform.
Amrita IAS Academy.